Have you ever thought that the rules don't apply to you? That you've got that quiet confidence inside that says, oh, don't worry about it. I'll be fine. I can handle it. Well, I've done that and it nearly landed me in serious trouble. I was in Australia earlier on this year as part of a 4-month sabbatical from work. And on one occasion, I was out in the bush, miles from anywhere, filming a YouTube video. Now, I was with some family at the time and some friends, and they'd said to me, whatever you do when you're filming, make sure you stay on the path. Don't wander off the path. It's too dangerous to leave the path when you're in the bush. Now, there are snakes and there are spiders and there are all sorts of other things that you don't normally see in North London where I live. So I thought to myself, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to stay firmly on the path. Well, I started walking and the camera was rolling and I was filming away. And at one point I thought, do you know what? This path is a bit dull. I think I'm going to just step off and see where it goes to. So I did what any overconfident bloke might do. I thought I knew I could handle it. So I stepped off the path and I just went off into the bush 20, 30 yards. That's all. But within seconds, I was completely disorientated. I turned around and then I turned around again. And suddenly I didn't know which direction I was facing. And everything looked absolutely identical. The trees, the bushes, the ground. There was no sense of depth to what I was seeing. And I had completely lost sense of direction. And I walked into the direction that I thought was the right way. But I was actually going further and further into the bush. And I turned one way and then I turned another. And I lost my bearings entirely. And I started panicking. I thought the next time anybody heard of me would be on the news that evening where this crazy Brit had got lost wandering off into the bush. And the thing is, I knew I wasn't alone, but not in a good way. I think you know what I'm saying. And then after what felt like forever, I finally heard it. There was the faint hum of a car engine somewhere beyond the trees. So I followed the sound and I found my way eventually back onto the path. And standing there, my heart was pounding and I thought I should have stayed on the path. And then it hit me a little bit later on that actually this wasn't just about getting lost in the bush in Australia. It was actually about my ego, that part of me that believes I'm the exception. Other people need the rules. Other people need the path, but I need just a little bit of space. You know what I mean? And it turns out that that's the lie that gets you lost the fastest in life. Psalm 16 verse 11 says this, you make known to me the path of life. Now that word path comes up quite a lot in the Bible. And the idea of there being a path for us to follow through life isn't a sort of fence, as it were. It's not a boundary to stop us exploring. It's God showing us the way that we should stay on in order to stay alive. When God gives us limits, it's not punishment, it's protection. The serpent in Eden, in the story in Genesis, didn't tempt Eve to sort of run away from God completely in the wrong direction. He just persuaded Eve to step slightly beyond what God had told her to do. He tempted Eve to step slightly off of the path. And sin, of course, doesn't always look like rebellion. Sometimes sin looks like curiosity without humility. I stepped off the track because I wanted something more interesting. But when I stepped off the track, I didn't find adventure. I found chaos instead. And how many times do we do that spiritually? How often do we step off the path because we're bored of obedience and we might just want a little bit of adventure somewhere, or we might think we know better, or we might think we are spiritually strong enough. Other people need to stay on the path. But I'm so spiritually mature, it's okay for me to step off it because I'll find my way back on again. We wander off of the spiritual path for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's pride. We think we can handle more than we can. Sometimes it's restlessness, the illusion that the real excitement is just beyond the boundary. The grass is greener on the other side. Sometimes we step off the path through pain. We're trying to outrun or outstep something that is inside of us. But the wilderness off path always costs more than we expect. And here's the twist, really, that God doesn't stand at the path and then when you come back on it, it's not like he's standing there going, I told you so. It's not like he's shouting at us or angry with us or disappointed in us. It's not like he's shouting from the sidelines. Instead, God is sending us signs of grace to gently restore us and gently bring us back onto the path again as an act of love. For me, it was the sound of a car engine that I was able to follow and come back onto the path again. For you, if you've stepped off the path in your life, it might be a friend's advice. It might be a verse from scripture. It might be a sermon that you've heard. It might just be a moment of conviction within your heart. God's grace isn't going to drag you back onto the path, and he's not angry with you. He's not going to shout at you and have a go. Instead, through grace, God is going to lovingly wait for you and guide you back onto the path and remind you where home and safety is. So maybe you have stepped off the path. Maybe you've stepped off the path in your faith. Maybe you've stepped off the path in an important relationship that you've got, or maybe in terms of your spiritual disciplines. It may not be that you've consciously meant to run from God. Perhaps you thought you'd be fine, but actually you've just gone too far off the path and you're struggling to find the way back again. Everything looks the same now. You've lost a sense of direction. Well, if that is the case, I would say to you today, listen for God's grace. Listen for that prompting, that friend's advice, that encouragement, that verse in scripture, that word through a sermon or a YouTube video, that moment of conscience pricking your heart. Listen for God's grace speaking to you. It's quieter than guilt, God's grace, but it's infinitely more reliable. And then when you hear that prompting, when you get a sense of God's grace speaking to you and calling you back onto the right path again, take one small step back and allow God to guide you back onto the right path. And remember that the path isn't a boundary. The path isn't a cage. It's the way to real, true joy in life. So I learnt that day in the bush in Australia that the path doesn't limit freedom. Instead, it protects your life. If I'd stayed off the path for too long and carried on wandering in the wrong direction, I would have died. And who knows, my body may still not have been found to this day. Stay on the path was the advice of friends and family, not in order to punish me or discipline me, but to keep me safe. We are in a living, loving relationship with God, and the best place, the safest place, the most joyful place for any one of us to be is close to him. Because when you stay on the path, the spiritual path, you stay in his presence. Psalm 16, verse 11 says, you make known to me the path of life. In your presence, there is fullness of joy. And you know what? That's the truth.